Are you ready to move from an ordinary life to an extraordinary one where you meet your business goals, create a life that has success in health, wealth, and for self? Then come and join us for our retreat in Byron Bay, Australia at the end of July, start of August 2025, and come and rediscover who you really are. More details can be found at willowhealing.org.
Welcome to Willow Healing Matters, the podcast. We are so excited to have you joining us on this journey where we explore different ways to empower your soul, whether it's healing in your kitchen or all the way up in the corporate world. Come with us as we look into different ways to heal your mind, body, and soul. Hey everyone, it's Catherine from Willow Healing, and I have the wonderful Alison Smith with us today. So Alison is a speaker, coach, and author of Can't See the Wood for the Trees, Landscaping Your Life to Get Back on Track. With over 20 years of experience, she developed the unique Landscaping Your Life LYL process, which uses nature's wisdom and metaphors to help people and teams overcome challenges and find fresh perspectives. Through creative techniques like stepping out of a rut or seeing the wood for the trees, Alison inspires others to reconnect with their flow and navigate life's crossroads with clarity. Her practical approach has helped individuals and businesses thrive in uncertain times. When not transforming lives, Alison enjoys open water swimming along Scotland's Fife coast and sharing insights through her vlogs. So a big welcome to the show, Alison. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So we were just talking before we started recording. We don't know what weird and wonderful ways we're going to go with this, but I guess the first thing to start with is what inspired you to write your book and start connecting people with nature again?
Well, the book bit was that I'd always wanted to write a book. Yeah. So there was something about, there was always going to be a book. I wasn't sure what the subject was going to be. And then I used nature as a metaphor in business, actually, initially. And because my profession back in the day was procurement, people, anybody listening, if you work in business, it's, if purchasing are going to come to you and talk to you about supplier management, what are you going to do? And quite often it's yawn and go, I like my suppliers, there's nothing wrong with my suppliers. And we did a workshop where I used gardening as a metaphor for looking after suppliers. So that the sort of analogy was suppliers are the same as plants in your garden. You wouldn't dream, certainly here in the UK, lots of people have got gardens. You wouldn't dream of not weeding them, not pruning them, not, mowing the lawn. When it's really warm, you'd water it. You know that certain plants go in certain places, and that if you gave a shade-loving plant too much sun, it would die. And so when you told everybody, well, all of what you know about gardening, you can apply to suppliers, looking after suppliers, it's like the penny dropped. So it didn't matter how much theory we gave them about real supply management, not interested. As soon as we said, but you could have a supplier that's like a weed, you could have a supplier that's not thriving. It needs time in the greenhouse. And so that was my first introduction to how powerful metaphor was in not getting people lost in the data and the drama of the current situation, because quite often in organizations, people are attached to their supplier. So they'll defend their supplier. So if you're sticking to the story, then they're not listening because they're too busy defending their story. So metaphor, I think that's what I learned, was metaphor allows us to sort of send the story, the drama, on a coffee break, as I call it. So we're not getting caught up in all of that. And then it just enables us to see new insight. Now, I think and then I did a neuro-linguistic programming workshop, found out, there's lots you can be doing with metaphor. And then, because I think I'd started with the gardening, I just expanded it to nature more generally, and suddenly found that you could go for a walk and ask people to look for patterns in nature, and they could see them. And I think the reason I stuck with it, and all the tools I've added to my what I now call creative coaching toolkit, is because I'm an awkward so-and-so. So personally, metaphors work for me, because if if I'm struggling, I defend my current status quo and don't want to be told what to do. And so when people come up with more logical reasons of why don't you try this? Why don't you do that? What about this? Oh, I've tried that before. Oh, that won't work. So my logical mind will defend its current viewpoint really, really well. And I will run rings around people logically defending the current status, I suppose. However, as soon as you start talking metaphor to me, and then obviously that's what I do with clients, it's like all of that goes out the window. Logic isn't there to defend it. You're talking to a different part of yourself, and that part of you does know what it wants to do, and therefore, you'll notice something. I use nature, but you notice something in nature, and then it's as if the door opens in your mind to the solutions. So for me, I suppose I did it because it was a way that bypassed my resistance to change.
It's so funny you say that, because it made me think of this thing that happened the other week. So I have this client, and he's got autism spectrum disorder. So he's very black and white, right? And he told me as soon as we started working on these emotion stuff, because he really, he packs it down so much, he gets anxiety from it, right? So he's not really feeling it. And I said to him, I'm going to teach you to meditate. He goes, I can't meditate. I said, we'll see. So we ended up and we got him on this beach, and I said, all right, there's something in the water for you. Just trust in my intuition. There's something in the water, go in the water. He's like, okay. So he goes out in the water and he goes, oh, there's a white fish. I've never seen a white fish before. I said, okay, what's the white fish saying? He goes, go to sleep. I said, oh, that's interesting, because he'd been like staying up longer and his body was like really suffering. I said, what do you think that means? And he said, I need to go to sleep. So even though it was like this metaphor of this fish in the water, he sort of saw straight away, like the message was so clear for him, exactly what you said. Your inner wisdom knows what it wants, but he had to get to that point. Whereas if I said to him, you just need to sleep more, he wasn't going to do it. And then we came out of it and he goes, oh my gosh, what happened? I said, you meditated. And he goes, no. I said, so when we have this again and I say we're going to do a meditation or visualize, I said, you're not freaking out on me, right? And he goes, no, I'm not. Okay. So, so I just think if I can get like a teenage boy who's on the spectrum to do that, yeah, I'm like, no, everyone can try, right?
Yeah, and I think what you will have had is a belief in the process you were sharing. Yeah. And I know I've done it many a time in business where people go, I don't understand how you got that group of people who are very close to do it. And I don't know how to describe it. I'm open to anybody having any reaction, but I also go in with try it. But I also go in with, an expectation that they will get it.
Yeah.
And it's letting them have their reaction, because that's part of the process.
Yeah, and it's almost like you have to be detached from the outcome, but you still want that better outcome. But if they don't get it, then they don't get it, because that's exactly where they have to be at the moment.
Yeah, I think I do invite them to humour me, I suppose. So it's like, well, just try it. You might not get it. So there is an allowing, you're right. I do allow them to, you may go in and come out the other side and have not got anything. And that is, you might be in, and I think the percentages I use are quite often 25% don't get it, 75% do. So they're being allowed to be in that 25%. But yeah, they get it at some level. I mean, somebody wasn't getting nature, and I think we ended up using football as a metaphor, just because they were so more comfortable with football. I can't ask as many questions about football because I don't understand it, which makes it cleaner. I mean, there is clean language around metaphor that would say, if somebody is mentioning that they're feeling ungrounded, that you can't make any assumption about what that ungrounded looks like, feels like, and you have to only ask very open questions to allow the person to explore it. Whereas I sort of impose normal operation for nature to be in the metaphor. So for instance, if somebody says, well, I feel like I'm in the middle of the winter, I would always assume that we've got spring coming next, not autumn. Whereas clean wise, that might be possible. The other thing that I have learned that I have to be careful about is that, here in the UK, we have 4 seasons. In some parts of the world, they only have 2 seasons. And in other parts of the world, 6 seasons. And it's the 6 seasons that really interest me, because there's one where that it's, the normal 4, but what you have is an extra season between autumn and winter, because that's when the water freezes.
Oh.
So it's like we go from autumn, and then winter is when everything's frozen. So the bit between autumn and winter is this sort of a 5th one where the water freezes, and then the other one is coming out of winter to spring, and that's when the water thaws.
I'm learning something new. I had no idea.
But the interesting thing for me is that then, if you were talking to somebody and they were talking about they felt like they were in winter, and they weren't able to get, it's like everybody else is already in spring, everything is already happening, there's new growth for everybody else, and they're still in winter. The understanding that in some parts of the world there is another season in between those would enable me to talk about, so what needs to thaw? Actually, what are you hanging on to that needs to be relaxed?
And
it wouldn't automatically be a conversation I'd have if somebody was saying they want to be in spring.
Yeah, and I guess that's where it comes back to, when we talk about interpreting dreams as well, because dreams are all about what it means for the person. The best example I heard was most people in America they were using the example, would think a lake house is like a fun place or somewhere you can go for a holiday. But if someone had their dad pass away there, the lake house is going to have really horrible memories. So that's what with the metaphors, it really depends exactly how it lands on the person and what resonates with them.
Absolutely. And it's really hard. If I take a group out into nature, see, I do listen to my intuition, and therefore I'll be much more inclined to say to one person, oh, have you noticed this? Or, they've said something, and then my questions, and I have to be guided by listening to the intuition about what questions I ask about the metaphor. And then some people in the group, while they're listening to that, will suddenly go, oh, it's this. And I'll think, there isn't a part of my body that agrees with you that it's that. And then you look at the other person who's looking blankly and they're going, nah. And it's that, yeah, I know. So yes, it is harder when you're in a group, because people want to be helpful and they want to impose their view of the landscape on the other person. It's like, that's not the point. I ask questions that, again, enable somebody to go, no, I don't know what you're talking about. I do trust my intuition, so sometimes I might push it a bit more, or we might come back at it later. So it's very, we could all look at the view out of my window at the moment and notice completely different things.
Yeah. And I guess too, that's where your intuition kicks in, because sometimes you'll just have that feeling, and even though the person's like, oh, no, you just kind of go, let's just wait and see what happens. And then sure enough, a month later or 2 months later, they often get back to you and go, you know how you said that? You were right. And you're like, thank you. Because, and you don't always get that validation, but when you do, it's like, okay, great. I'm still in tune.
Yeah, I get a very physical, it's strange. It's like, it's as if, how do I describe it? It's like the thing that the person is working on in my head that needs unblocking is attached to my right side, is sort of, if I put my hand out in front of me, it's where my hand would be, is the best description.
Yeah.
So it's sort of away from my body, and there's a circle, and that's where the issue is. So, and that's just a feeling I get. Yeah. So as soon as somebody starts talking to me about something and my mind is aware that I've gone, to the left-hand side of me, or to the, anywhere else but this circle, I sort of know we're off track.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then it's, well, I mean, at one time I was quite rude because the person said, I want to talk about this. I said, we can talk about that. But there isn't any part of me that believes that that is where you'll find your solution. So you can talk about that. I'd prefer us to talk about this, and I'd prefer us to talk about this first. But if you'd like to talk about that, great. I just can't guarantee that we'll get you where you want to be. But I can only advise my intuition, I suppose, and it could be wrong, so I can't, mandate that we change the conversation.
I guess that's just where it comes back to people's level of awareness and where they're up on their journey. And sometimes, I've had this too, where I've done readings for people and I've seen what their future could look like, because I often get shown the highest timeline and I can't actually say anything because it's not my job to tell them what their life can look like. It's actually my job to guide them, to say, hey, here are some choices, if you do this, then this might happen, or this might happen, or this might happen. But I can't tell them what they can and can't do because they have free will and it's always their choice. But at the same time, you just have to go, okay, that's your journey. You chose not to do that, and that's okay too. Yeah.
I think the other thing I do think about as well is that we as coaches are the same as, the landscapes, the fact that there are coaches that would resonate with some people and not with others. So I also sometimes trust the fact that the reason the person is in front of me is because they are prepared to be confronted with how I say it, because I will say what comes to mind. I mean, you're right. If they've not asked me to, I'm not going to turn around, as you've just said. I'm not going to tell them something, even if I think it. If they've not asked for it, it's not part of the process. But if somebody really, really wants to talk about the drama and the story, and they're sitting in front of me, I trust that they know enough about me for me to be able to say, my process doesn't work on the content of the story. And we can talk about that, but you're just telling me what you already know. And what you already know hasn't found the insight you need. Yeah. So we need to go into, as I call it from a landscape point of view, things that are hidden from view. It's the things that are around the corner, or it's the I did a podcast once and I was going, right then, so let's look at you look at the landscape in front of you and pick a part of it that reflects the current situation. And then I started laughing, realizing that I'd precluded the other 180 degrees of landscape that was behind me.
Oh.
And it was like, wow, yeah. All 360 degrees of landscape.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I guess too, it just comes back to what you feel pulled that person really needs at the time. And I like that you use metaphors to get people out of the logical mind and pull them back into, it's almost the imaginary, right? I'm assuming that's why you use the metaphors.
Yes, I mean, for me, we've got lots of different terms for it. The unconscious, the more creative part. And I think for me, that's where it's allowing the other person to use the term that they're most comfortable with. Because if I say unconscious, somebody might go, oh, it's like, well, just a creative part of you. It's like, which is where we're sending logic on a coffee break comes from. Because it's just, most people relate to logical thinking. So it's just, you know what, there are parts of our brain that work differently. And actually, that's why dreams, I think, are so metaphorical. Because the logical mind goes to sleep, I think.
Yeah.
Whereas our creative mind, our unconscious, does other things, and therefore, if you go back to our ancestors, then they told stories, and they were all metaphor. I'm sure you could tell me loads about the dreaming, which is all about using, the metaphor of the landscape to inform insight, information, that then travels forward.
Yeah, I started to look into dreams when I was younger because I kept dreaming about dying. And I didn't realize that it was actually not a bad thing. It was actually just a rebirth thing, right? You're just shedding an old identity and moving forward. But at the time, I was freaked out by it because, I was in my early teens, I think it was, or, preteen, that kind of age. And it was obviously the hormone changes and everything like that, when you're shifting to this next kind of female level. And I was just like, why do I keep dreaming I'm dying? And they were so vivid. And I have very vivid dreams sometimes. And I was like, and then I laughed because it's full circle, because when I had this discussion the other day when I was with my ex, I kept dreaming that he was dying because that was the easy way out of the relationship. And
Well, not less, but
yeah, and it sounds horrible, but I was actually in the dream, and I still remember I would react like, oh, that's wonderful. Oh, hang on, I'm not meant to react like that. I'm the wife. I'm meant to actually be, be sad. So I'd almost automatically swap from being relieved to being sad. And it wasn't that I wished that of him. I just wanted out of that relationship. But it was funny how that came through at that metaphorical level for me. And I kept dreaming of running, running away. Like actually, and I really, I'm not a runner. I don't like running. I tried it to try and get fit. And I'm like, why am I doing this to myself? I really don't like this. And, so to dream that I was running and wanting to run through a field, I was like, oh, I really do want to run away from this.
the thing is I can never run in dreams. Yeah. I always have to bound. It's like I'm up in the air. I'm either flying or each step is like, it's like I can push myself up and sort of fly through the air and then come down again. I just can't run in dreams. I don't know what that's about.
I don't know either.
No, somebody might write in and tell us, mightn't they? They might
maybe.
Go, Alison, it's this.
Maybe.
It means that you can't.
All right. If anyone knows why Alison can't run in her dreams, please let us know, because it would be curious just to find out. Maybe you're meant to swim. Maybe that's why.
Perhaps it is. Well, it took me long enough, though, because I've lived here 20 years, and it was only sort of 6 years ago when I thought, I wonder whether I could swim in the sea. I mean, to be fair, it is cold. Yeah. So at the moment, I can't translate it into different temperatures, but at the moment, it'll be about 6 degrees.
Yeah, cold.
So is it 43 or something?
I don't know. I do degrees Celsius too, so I have no idea. So if you're American, just ask Google. Just ask Google. You'll figure it out.
So it's 6 degrees, and then in the summer it only goes up to about 14. So it never gets that warm.
Oh, do you wear a wetsuit, or do you just go in swimmers?
Wetsuit from the first year I persevered till January, so the temperatures had got down to about 8 degrees, and then it was a wetsuit. Because, I mean, there are lots of people that go swimming and prefer it without a wetsuit, but in the winter you can only then go swimming for like 3 minutes before you get hypothermia. So it's that whole, no, I have no desire to traipse down to the sea for a 3-minute swim. So the wetsuit allows me to traipse down to the sea and go for a longer swim. The other thing is that I only swim when it's sunny. So, I mean, I don't mind frost on the ground. So I don't mind it being 0 degrees in the air. So I don't mind the cold. I just can't cope with grey cloud while I'm swimming, because it's like I feel the cold. I once said to somebody, perhaps I should persevere to swim, all year round, irrespective of the weather. And somebody said, but you get so much joy from swimming when it's sunny. Why would you spoil that? Because it's that whole, there's a real connection with nature that I don't get in the sea anyway, when it's grey and cold.
Yeah. Whereas
when it's, the sparkle on the sea, however cold it is, all is well in the world, and I feel a huge connection. But it isn't. I suppose, actually, this is the first time I thought about it. I suppose it's because when it's sunny, I am focusing on nature and not thinking about how cold I'm feeling. Whereas when it's grey, then it's just reinforcing how I'm feeling, and therefore I can feel my body, and then there's the resistance to, really?
And you chose to live in Scotland.
But you see, if I came to Australia, the 2 times I've been, I've come March to, I was there in June, but like March to June.
Yeah.
So I was there for winter solstice, not summer solstice.
Yeah. Yeah. See, you didn't want the extreme heat, so fair enough. I understand that.
No, I think my thermostat is about 10 degrees off. So as soon as I get over about 20 degrees, I start to get uncomfortable.
Yeah, don't come here in the middle of summer. It's not fun. It's not fun. So my question, I was just thinking about your so how do you bring nature into organizations and to companies to get them to see what's kind of happening?
Well, I think I was just lucky that I went off and did well, I suppose luck, but also a belief that I'm willing to try anything as soon as I think of it. So I don't feel the need, I'm quite happy to practice things sort of live. So what happened was that I was working for an organisation that merged with another organisation.
Yeah.
And I'd gone off and done my neuro-linguistic programming training. So I'd sort of become the office coach. So, Alison, if you're struggling with anything, go to Alison. So I was just really lucky that I was learning things. And then I was also responsible for the team away days. So I could decide we were going to do metaphor or, let's use nature. And then various people left that organisation and went elsewhere. And then they go, we'll get Alison in to do nature. So I suppose that's what's happened, is that I've met people, and then, so there's one leadership group, membership group that I'm a member, that I sort of go to fairly regularly. And they always have, so they do coaching sessions, but they always have like the traditional coaching sessions if people want to do it, or me. So they always go, well, Alison's going to do something a bit different. And so I always get, and I can't really have more than about 6 or 7. And I normally get 6 or 7 from this group of 15. So I think sometimes it's just, an absolute belief. A belief that it will work, and a absolutely it being okay right at the beginning when I think, oh my God, is this going to be the one time it isn't going to work?
I guess that's where it comes back to trusting in your intuition and your inner wisdom, right? That it's like, well, it hasn't. And I love that you just act on it as soon as it comes through, because it's something that's come up again and again. And then with my coaching group I'm like, when you get your intuitive insights, you don't put them in a drawer for later. You actually need to go and use them. And the amount of people I've spoken to who have ignored that intuitive pull, and it might be as simple as putting a unique post on social media or something, and they're like, I'll do it tomorrow. And then by tomorrow, someone else has done it. And I was like, well, that's how the universe works, right? If you don't act on that intuition, then someone else is going to get it.
Yeah, I also think there's something around, I always likening it to that, you're at a party or whatever, and you see, I see this guy and think, I'll go and say hello. So intuition says to go and say hello to this guy. But it's as if I then make the next 100 steps about what are going to happen based on one intuitive thing that I need to go and speak to them. So I always said, it was like, then it's like, oh my God, I wonder whether he's single. If he's single, perhaps we'd go out for a date. And it's like, like within 2 seconds, you're married to that person in your head. And all that, perhaps my intuition is to go and speak to them because that's the man I'm going to be with for the rest of my life. Whereas actually, it's the first step, and not to get carried away with steps 2, 3, and 4, because at the moment I'm doing all sorts of things with YouTube, and to me it was like I'm thinking, I'm going to have a YouTube channel, and I don't know whether the intuition was that, but what the intuition was absolutely throw yourself into YouTube. I'm assuming it's in order to have a successful YouTube channel. And I'm not saying that won't be, but what I'm also getting is a whole load of other things that wouldn't have come about if I wasn't regularly doing videos, had a reason to do it. It's forcing me to do things in a timely manner. So there's loads and loads and loads of things that have come about as a result of me committing to do YouTube.
Yeah.
that aren't anything to do with YouTube. They're just the things that come out of that activity.
Yeah, and I can very much relate to that because when I started this podcast, I just had a feel to do a podcast. And then I've just connected and collaborated with so many people across the world because it's just a platform where we can share knowledge and share information. And I've learned a lot, but then also I get to collaborate and meet with people like yourself and find out your story and your journey and go, oh, and I always take something away. So as much as it was just this field to just start this podcast, it was like, actually, no, there's something bigger here. And even, we met on Podmatch. So even like I had this intuitive hit, I should join Podmatch. And within 3 weeks of joining, I had to go from fortnightly episode releases to weekly because I had such a backlog of things. And then all of a sudden I'm on all these podcasts and meeting these amazing people. And it's like, wow, and I didn't go in with that intention. It was just following that intuition of, hey, let's just see what this is about. And then all this amazing stuff came from it. So, it's like you detach from the outcome and you just trust the initial jump, right?
Completely. The same with Podmatch for me was that, so Podmatch matches me with, to be a guest. And I said to my PA at the time, right, well, we need to, in 2 months' time, we need to look at the return on investment, because it's so much a month to pay and blah, blah. And then within like a month, I'm saying to her, oh, let's not bother about the return on investment, because I was getting so much, because I tried to do a guest slot once a week, and I get so much from talking to people.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, it's worth the money. It's worth the money to have, if you look at it, say 4 conversations a month of me getting passionate and being reminded, because everybody asks different questions. So being reminded about a particular story or why I did it or how to explain what I do. And none of that would have come about if I'd have just sat at home and, not listened, as you say, not listened to that intuition of let's sign up.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's such an important message for anyone listening, that if you get that intuitive hit, just trust it, and say yes, even if you don't understand how it's going to happen yet. Just say the yes, and I think it was Richard Branson who said that if you're presented with an opportunity, just say yes and figure out the rest later, and because it is so important that if we honor that intuition and say yes, then you'll keep getting those intuitive hits and you'll learn how to trust it better. And then you are really getting your inner guidance, and it's not based on what other people around you are saying.
Yeah, I've got an analogy, and it's the first time I've thought about it this way, but I'm not very good at drinking enough water, and my body doesn't ask me for water. Yeah. However, the other week I went, right, I'm going to measure my water, and so of course my water intake doubled at least. But then my body started asking me for water. So I do think that that's similar to intuition, that because so somebody then turned around and said to me, well, it's because your body you weren't listening to your body when it was telling you it needed water. So it just stopped giving you the signs. Yeah. It stopped asking for water because it was a bit tired really of, it's just, we're going to have to cope with what she gives us. So it's a bit like that with intuition, I suppose. The fact that if we're not listening, it will then dial itself down.
I love that you found another metaphor to explain your intuition. Thanks, Alison.
Well, I hadn't thought of that one before, but it's that whole,
No, and it makes perfect sense because I talk to this about people too. Like the universe gives you signs and leaves you symbols, but if you're not open to looking at them and they keep making it bigger and bigger and you still keep ignoring them, they'll just stop giving them to you.
Oh, it's hilarious. It was, lots of things happening at the moment, or nothing happening. So very much like spring. It's sort of that middle phase. Everything's happening under the ground. You can't see it. And I was, my brain's gone now. So I was getting that's right. I was getting really, really frustrated with the lack of patience. With lack of progress. It's like I'm tired of waiting, and then. Every tool I used, whether it was the transformation game, going out for a walk, I've had a new cat who's 7 move into the house. Every way I looked, I was being told, have patience. Whether it was, card I was set back by in the transformation game was I'm tired of waiting. I wrote a poem about that. And then literally I finished the transformation game and I'd been sort of whacked with this, just keep one step at a time, don't get ahead of yourself, just have faith. And then I walked outside and there was a heron in the bay. And it's always the heron was where the heron always is, if there is a heron there, because it's tide dependent.
Yeah.
And obviously it's tide dependent because that's when they're going to get the fish and where they're going to get the fish. And so I thought, I'll try and get a video of the heron getting a fish. And 20 minutes later, I gave up. But the heron didn't. The heron knew it would get a fish. It hadn't got a fish the whole time I was there, but it was still there. And it was a real sense for me that it had faith that it was going to get a fish, because it knows that fish at that time, in that place, at that tide height, will have fish. So it knew. So it didn't give up. Whereas I'm just, oh God, I can't be bothered, I'll give up. So yeah, even that was, and then the next day it was really icy around there. And so it was you can only, because I've got arthritic knees, so I'm not that confident on slippy ice. I mean, I'm sure lots of people aren't, but it was that, in order to get to the other side of the ice safely, I needed to slow down. And so slowing down would get me there quicker than if I'd gone quickly. Because if I'd gone quickly and ended up on the floor, then we could have been, broken bones and all sorts of things. So everywhere I looked, I was being hammered with patience, 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 patience.
Yeah.
Patience.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because often what happens on our inside reflects what happens on the outside, and it's when you start to put those things together that you go, oh, okay, maybe that's what the universe is saying to me.
The cat. Oh my golly, she's 7. She's been elsewhere. She's been with me 7 weeks today, and she's spent most of it under the bed. And it was like as soon as I move towards her, as soon as I'm attached to wanting her to do something, she just runs under the bed. So it's that. So not only has it been patience, but it's been non-attachment to the outcome.
Yeah. Oh, just so many metaphors, right? From life, from the universe, from everything. And as we finish up our time together, Alison, I asked my guests if there was something they could heal or change in the world, what would it be?
For me, it's our organisations, and normally that's the organisations in terms of the companies that we work for. I think as we record this, then there's lots of things politically going on, and I suppose there never isn't anything going on politically. So I just wonder whether it's bringing our humanity into our organisations, whether those are businesses or political organisations. Because I always remember doing a workshop where I had cards with words on them, and I'd start the workshop and say, tell me how that card relates to the job you're doing. And it was in purchasing, so we were going back to that supplier management piece. And somebody picked up the word kindness and said, can I have another card because my card doesn't apply to what I do?
Oh dear.
It was just, no, what? We're doomed if we can't bring kindness into our organisations. And for me, it was just that, we're getting there, I think, but it is one of those sometimes 2 steps backwards, 2.5 steps forward. And so for me, it's about us being okay with taking our humanity into business, because quite often people will come up to me at workshops and say, and this is just me, even procurement workshops, going, I didn't know I could do that. So I think if anybody ever goes, I don't think I can do something in business, I think I'd like them to ask themselves why.
Why not?
Yeah. Yes, that's nice. Yeah, why not? Well, why can't you do that? Because of course we need our humanity in there.
We do. And I think that's the biggest thing. Often we forget that we are human and that we need to connect to our humanness, because that really, with all the things changing, especially with AI coming in, that is what separates us from AI. It's our feelings and our emotions and our metaphors and our understandings and being kind to each other and bringing that humanity back.
Absolutely. And I think, I don't know, perhaps that's why I also do nature, because that also reminds us about our humanity. You know, I think we are nature.
Yeah, we come from nature.
So therefore what we're doing to the planet is what we're doing to ourselves. And so I think sometimes, I know we talked about this beforehand, which is, you know, I suppose my belief is if I can help people connect to their inner wild, they're more likely to then connect to the planet differently.
Yeah.
Whereas there'll be other people that will be starting with, can we change our relationship to nature? Whereas mine's much more about our connection with ourselves, and that as that deepens, so too will our connection with other people and the planet.
Yeah, definitely. And Alison, if people want to find you or connect with you or check out your YouTube channel, how can they find you?
Landscaping Your Life. There are lots of Alison Smith, so I think you'd be better off putting in Landscaping Your Life, because it's a Landscaping Your Life channel on YouTube. And yeah, the Landscaping Your Life hashtag is in most social media. It is alisonsmith.co is the website, but my sense is Landscaping Your Life won't have you going round and round in circles.
Yes, you do have a very generic surname, I have to say.
Yes, Alison Smith isn't very helpful. I mean, even to the extent where my emails now, I should have got in quicker. So my emails are alisonsmith.co or alisonsmith.eu, but because the UK has come out of Europe, I'm not even allowed to have the .eu email. So yeah.
How frustrating. Well, I will make sure that I put in the show notes all the ways that people can find you, so they can just click on the link and they don't have to think about which Alison Smith's the right one. So perfect. But thank you so much for being on the show, Alison. It's been very insightful, and I love that I now have a metaphor for intuition with water. So thank you for that.
I've loved it. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Willow Healing Matters, the podcast. We have so much love and gratitude that you have taken the time out of your day to empower you on your healing journey. The views shared by the person being interviewed might not necessarily reflect that of the host and should be used at your own discernment. Trust what resonates for you and follow your heart and soul guidance. If you have any underlying medical conditions or mental health issues, please consult with your healthcare provider before pursuing any of the recommendations. Likewise, you can always contact the person being interviewed to find out more information. This can be found in the show notes. Remember to activate, align, heal, empower, and find love in everything that you do.